Introducing LT Defense Tactical Gear, your ultimate solution for top-notch protection and performance in the field. Our armor bundles provide unmatched safety and comfort, while our battle belts and holsters ensure quick and easy access to your gear. Stay prepared for any situation with our high-quality medical supplies, designed to keep you ready for action at all times. Looking to enhance your skills? Our firearms training programs will take your proficiency to the next level. Trust LT Defense for all your tactical gear needs and gear up for success on the battlefield.
Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. I'm Amber, and today's episode is a recorded one. Laura is not here. She's been working, and so it's just me today. So I am interviewing Ian Murray, and he is a former National Guard, and he's got a wild story about some crazy people that he was working with who were trying to make his life miserable is pretty much the summation of the stories from what I get. And so we're going to interview him today. So here we go.
Interview of the week sponsored by LTD Tactical.
Hello, Ian. Welcome to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio.
Hi there.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Could you please just tell us who you are, like your service, why you joined, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. As you mentioned, I was in the National Guard at one point. I've been in the military for a total of right at 22 years now. I started out as Air Force Reserve in 2002. I switched to the Army National Guard in 2006 and then was recruited into the intelligence field of the Army Reserves in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've been doing since. I'm still currently in the reserves. I just got back from a deployment from the Horn of Africa.
Oh.
So, I've always had a fascination with the military ever since I've been a kid. My grandfather was a World War II Army vet, and I grew up in a military town, that being Jacksonville, Florida. So I've always just had a fascination and a lot of exposure with the military, and it's one of those things I just always wanted to be a part of at some level.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. I grew up in a military town as well, and my dad and stepdad were in the military, and I just always had an innate fascination with the Army and wanting to serve. And then I also wanted to be a police officer as well. When I went to MEPS, they didn't have any openings, so I got aviation operations. But yeah, so I definitely feel you on that. Growing up in a military town is kind of special. People don't understand me a lot because I know, at least in Lawton, Fort Sill, where I grew up, it was like a utopia. There was no racism, or if there was, it wasn't blatant. There wasn't anything like out in the open. Everybody was just cool with each other. We had a great time. And I'm coming to find out as an adult that just doesn't exist everywhere else.
Yeah, indeed. You're definitely right about that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's get into what happened. So you were in the National Guard, and you were also working as a corrections officer in Jacksonville, Florida.
Correct. I was in the National Guard when they hired me in 2009 to work as a corrections officer for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. It was during my time of employment there when I switched to the Army Reserves, which I said, again, that happened around 2013. So that was a big transition.
Okay. And so were there other people in this particular sheriff's office or orbit that were also in the National Guard or the Reserve or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there was lots of people. One of the guys in my academy class was in the reserves. There were a lot of other people within not only the corrections system, but also on the police force and just throughout the whole employment of the city that served in the military on a part-time capacity.
Okay. And so you were working as a corrections officer in a jail?
Correct.
Okay. And what kind of experience was that like? Or what was that experience like?
I mean, it was interesting. It was my second go around as a corrections officer. I'd worked in a previous department up in South Carolina for about 3 years. So, I mean, I was a little familiar with, the overall circumstances of working in a jail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's always interesting, but, for me, it was just a job. It was, I was military police for my first MOS.
Okay.
At one point, I did have some aspirations to becoming an actual police officer, but after a while, I was just kind of, not really interested in that. And I decided when I went to work for Jacksonville, after starting my job there, I was perfectly happy with just being a corrections officer. And they had a really good retirement program. If I'd done 20 years, I could have gotten a similar retirement to what I would have, what I'll eventually get in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my big motivation. I moved from South Carolina to Florida to take this job after going through a very long hiring process. So
they knew what they were getting into.
Correct. I mean, when I got hired, I was going through my oral board interview with some of the chiefs and the higher ranking members of the sheriff's office. And I reminded them that I was still in the National Guard. I had been for about 6 or 7 years total military at that time. And they encouraged me to use their military benefits they offered that they provided with their benefits package to the sheriff's office employees. So they knew very well that I had already had an established career with the military.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my husband was in the National Guard as well, and he ran into some problems getting off. He wasn't like harassed or anything like that, but they definitely made him go through hurdles to take his leave. It was interesting, and he has heard horror stories, but I'm not going to share those. But
that's okay, I understand.
But yeah, he's heard some horror stories.
Yeah, it's a shame that has to happen. And unfortunately, I had some of those hurdles when I started with Jackson. When I worked for Charleston County in South Carolina, I never had problems with them. It was always very easy. We had a much better military leave package, partially because I think our sheriff was a National Guardsman as well.
Okay.
But from when I started to work for Jacksonville, almost immediately there were issues with certain supervisors that seemed to just have problems with military reservists. I don't know if they just had an animosity against the military or they didn't like the fact we were getting extra leave and extra benefits for doing what we were doing. But yeah, almost from the get-go, I had problems with taking leave. I had a sergeant that was when I was in my training program, he came to me even after I'd already submitted my drill schedule for the National Guard. He started coming to me while I was on my FTO training, demanding that I give him actual orders for my drill dates. And I explained to him that's not how that works. You don't get orders every time you go to drill. We get the calendar, it's signed off on by the command, and we turn it in.
Yeah.
And he was ordering my FTO to start giving me negative marks on my training reports based off the fact that I wasn't complying with his request. And finally, I got an FTO one night that even said, this isn't right. We went to over his head, and that supervisor said, yeah, your military leave's already been approved for the next year. And I said, well, why am I getting hassled by this sergeant for, wanting additional documents? And he says, I don't know, but I'll find out. So that situation ended abruptly. And then another instance where I came on coming up off probation, another lieutenant and another sergeant, the sergeant, the one I'm talking about now, was actually involved in this major incident that we'll eventually discuss. And trying to keep me on probation for taking military leave, which is specifically outlined in the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act and a lot of other legislation. I told him, you're not allowed to do that. It's against the law. And I asked, is this other individual who I came through the academy with having to do this as well? And they said, I don't need to worry about that. And so at that point, I knew there was a problem, and I ended up calling mom. I didn't know who to go to. So I went to my union president and talked to him, just had an informal conversation. He's like, oh yeah, no, they can't do that. And they were even trying to get me to sign paperwork to basically relinquish my rights to my military leave.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
to basically say that I, agreed to not be subject to the rules governing military leave. So they basically could have fired me if I had to go to drill, if it came down to it. So that ended up resulting in me having to go work at a different facility for a while, because the two supervisors involved were already out there for being, from what I understand, being on bad terms with the sheriff's office as it was, and they couldn't move them back to the main facility. So I ended up going to work at the jail for a while. And unfortunately, I don't know why I was having all these problems. I never got any negative evaluations. My feedback was always pretty good from my coworkers. I never had any write-ups, disciplinary action, nothing like that. I came to work, did the best job I could, and that was my goal from day one. So yeah, I honestly don't know why all this happened.
So being from both sides, so I actually grew up in a military town where my mother was actually born in that military town. So so we have roots there, and I've seen both sides where the military comes in and the people who are from there, if that's their hometown, they kind of get defensive with anybody in the military. Do you think it was that, or do you think it was just a personal problem they had with you?
I honestly think it was a personal problem they had with me for some reason, because like I said, the sheriff's office has had these policies in place for a very long time. They've had other people that worked in the sheriff's office who were also in the military. In fact, one of the members of my military reserve unit I was with, she worked for the sheriff's office as a police officer and had been on the force with them for quite a while. And I honestly don't know why. Like I said, I don't know what the problem, if there was a problem with me, I don't know what it was. One of my supervisors I had at the time, when a lot of this was going on, these first two incidents, I asked him, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? He says, nothing. He says, you're not doing anything wrong. He says, I think this is just a personal conflict these people have with you. They don't like your personality or something, and they're just trying to mess with you. I don't think anyone involved in this whole thing ever expected it to go as far as it did, but it did.
Yeah, I think when people go to those kind of drastic measures and do ridiculous things like that, they don't think about the outcome, where they look like they're the fools after doing these things, So yeah, I can understand that.
Okay, what's great? Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say we're going to go to break, and we're going to play Matt Oakley, A Soldier's Son. This is his new single, and I'm really excited about it. It's really great, and he's going to be he's a future guest here. Cool. So stay tuned, everyone, and we'll be right back with Matt Oakley.
Well, he spent 22 years in the Army. We talked Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, and what I learned from him's worth more than anything anyone's bought me. That camo jacket with our last name, still in my closet to this day. There ain't enough money in the world you can give me to throw it away, 'cause I hold on to pictures and memories in that shadow box with everything still in it. When talked, I listened. So fly that flag in your front yard as high as you can, except for when we lose one, defending the land of the free. We're in the home of the brave. And pour one out for the ones who never made it home. Say a prayer for them mama as if she was your own. I can't wait to tell my boys about the wars we won. Yeah, I'm proud to be a soldier's son. Cassette tapes he mailed home, I'd rewind them all night long. Cause when I closed my eyes, I felt like he wasn't gone. And mama did the best she could, raising 3 kids while he stood on the front lines from dawn to dusk in a gun-smoked skyline. So fly that flag in your front yard as high as you can, except for when we lose one, defending the land of the free. We're in the home of the brave. And pour one out for the ones who never made it home. Say a prayer for them mama as if she was your own. I can't wait to tell my boys about the wars we won. Yeah, I'm proud to be a soldier's son. Proud to be a soldier's son. So I hold on to pictures and memories in their shadow box, with everything still in it. Whenever he talked, I listened. And he said, so fly that flag in your front yard as high as you can, except for when we lose one, defending the land of the free. Boy, you're in the home of the brave. So to this day, I pour one out for the ones who never made it home. Say a prayer for their mama as if she was my own. I can't wait to tell my boys about the wars we won. I can't wait to tell my boys about the wars we won. Yeah, I'm proud to be a soldier's son.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Welcome back, everybody, to Military Broadcast Radio. And this is Into the Weeds podcast with our guest, Ian Murray. And I'm sure everybody recognizes or realizes that I am not doing well today. I usually have my daughter to bounce back everything off of. So today I'm a little nervous because it's the first time I've been by myself in a really long time. So Ian, I'm very sorry about that.
It's okay.
Usually she's the comedic hour. She's the one that livens it up and makes everything flow much better. Okay, so we left off with the first incident that happened. Can you kind of give us more detail into what finally happened?
Oh, well, from that initial incident, I ended up having to go work down at the basically change facilities to get me away from the supervisors who were trying to not only, violate my rights, but in a sense, break the law. The director of corrections actually even had to get involved and called me personally to get my side of the story, because he couldn't really believe what was going on with this whole thing, and asked me if I'd be willing to go down and work at the main jail in order to just quell the situation. And I really didn't want to, but I was a probationary employee at the time, and I wanted to keep my job. I just bought another house and everything, and I didn't want to risk losing my job. So I kind of went along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I ended up working down at the main jail for a while, and everything was fine there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so when did all of this start happening? When did it finally become a problem?
The biggest problem originated probably, I think it was around somewhere in 2014. What happened was we had a drill date. We have a lot of drills where it's not just a Saturday and Sunday. We'd occasionally have some on Friday because we'd have administrative tasks or something where we needed to be able to call certain offices that were only open during the work week and whatnot. And that Friday, we were supposed to report in. There was a government shutdown. And Thursday night, I did my usual spiel. I called my squad leader at the time and said, "Hey, what's going on? Are we reporting in?" He says, "Well, because of the government shutdown," he says, "we're not reporting in, but we still have orders to be on military duty. So make sure you're available in case we get called in." And I didn't think anything of it because that was not the first time in my career that something like that had happened, especially being in the National Guard.
Yeah.
So I did exactly what he said. The next day I waited, nobody called. I stayed ready, had my uniform and my go bag ready to go. And then Friday night I got a call or a text or something saying we're coming in Saturday morning. So I went to drill, everything happened as usual, and that was it. Well, several months later, we got updated drill calendars for the rest of the fiscal year. And I took that in to adjust my future military leave dates, gave it to my lieutenant, and she called me into her office and asked me to explain why the dates had changed from the previous drill date that I just mentioned. And I explained the situation to her, and she instructed me, well, if you didn't actually go in, you need to change that day from a military leave day to a personal leave day. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange because I did have orders at the time to be on military duty, and it wasn't the first time that had happened. So I made a couple phone calls. I called my unit, my full-time staff, and they even said, yeah, if you had orders, you're fine. But if your civilian employers, that's their policy to do that, you should comply with them because you don't want to get in trouble with your job. So I called someone higher up in the sheriff's office and spoke with them. They said the same thing. They're like, yeah, you didn't do anything wrong. Everything's fine. If your lieutenant's ordering you to do it, go ahead and do it. Because if you don't, they said she'll likely write you up for insubordination. So I complied with her request. I came in the next workday, made the schedule change she advised me to from several months back. She denied the request she told me to make. And then I found out a week later through my military unit, she'd filed a felonious complaint against me with our integrity division with the sheriff's office, if you want to call them that. And it wasn't an administrative complaint. She actually filed a criminal complaint alleging that I'd somehow committed a crime. And
what was that crime?
Well, I guess her allegation was that I was somehow stealing money from the city via time by fraudulently using my military leave, which so that was what she was trying to get me on. And we found out later on that she'd been orchestrating this for a very long time. Like, this was not just a one-time incident. She'd actually been setting me up for this for a long time, unfortunately. I don't know what her problem with me was, but she'd filed false complaints against several of my colleagues, mostly male, for just stuff like this. Mine was the most severe from what I was told. A lot of my other colleagues had received write-ups and stuff for just basically doing their job, but she would write them up trying to misconstrue what they did as wrong. And it's sad because this is someone who's supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to look up to this person for guidance, but she clearly had some issues with a lot of people, certain group of people that worked in that jail or in that corrections center. And from my understanding, that's why she was working out at that remote facility too, because she just couldn't get along with people downtown at the main facility. So
she had a record of being a disgruntled employee already.
Very much so. And among other things, from what I found out later too. So supposedly I was under investigation for several months. Not much happened. My unit told me no one ever came to speak to them, called them, nothing. I did get about a month before this actual arrest happened. I got a phone call from one of the detectives asking if I'd be willing to call or, come in for questioning. And I said, okay, well, let me call someone for advice. So I called one of the union lawyers within the sheriff's office to get some just to get advice on what I should do.
Mm-hmm.
And he honestly said, if you have orders to back up all your military leave, which I did, then you're good. You don't really even need to go in for questioning. So just call them back, remind them that all of your orders are on file, and say you really don't need to make any further statements. So I said, okay. So I did just that. I told the detective too. I said, if you can't find them, call me back or something, and I'll email them to you, print them. I have them all on paper, and they're already on file with the records department of the sheriff's office. I reminded him I've never been granted leave without presenting documentation for military duty. So he's like, okay, thanks. So a month goes by, and from my understanding, like, that was supposed to be the end of the investigation. They said if they're going to come and do anything, it's going to happen like within the next day or two.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing happened for like a month. So I had assumed the whole thing had just been dropped. They went and found the orders, did what they were supposed to do, and that was it.
Okay.
And I got orders to go on military duty for about 90 days out of state. I was going up to do my initial intelligence training up in Massachusetts or something like that. I forget the exact location, but I got the orders. I brought them into the watch commander, turned them in. And I took a few days off prior to me. Actually, I had to leave on a Monday morning to fly out. And I took the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off before, just so I was married at the time. I wanted to spend some time with my ex-wife, and we had family that came in to spend time with us. So, we had a nice weekend. And then that Friday afternoon, the weekend before I was supposed to actually leave, I'm sitting in my living room at my house in Nassau County, which is outside of Jacksonville. And middle of the afternoon, I get a knock on the door that leads from my kitchen out to my garage. And I open the door, and there's 4 guys standing there wearing like semi-riot gear. And I'm like, can I help you? And they asked they asked, are you Ian Murray? I said, yeah. And they're like, corrections officer Ian Murray? I said, yeah, that's me. And one of them grabbed me and cuffed me, and I'm like, what's going on? And they said, we have a warrant for your arrest. I started laughing at first. I thought it was a joke. I thought some of my friends at work were just playing a kind of a send-off prank on me, but unfortunately it wasn't. They came into my house. A lot of them went like back into other areas of my house. I don't know what they did. One of them used the bathroom. I know that. I heard the toilet flush. I don't know if that was like a power grab move or something, but
probably.
They took me down to their station. They put me in their car, walked me down my driveway to one of their unmarked cars, and took me down to their little substation and started asking me all these questions about where I was on these days. I said, well, what did my orders say? And it became pretty clear that they had either never gone to look for my orders, which should have been the first part of their investigation, or they just did, and they just were trying to omit that and trying to get me to it. And they started asking me these all these questions about, and I said, look, everything is on orders. And it just, unfortunately, it was pretty clear. They started making these excuses. I could have been more cooperative and this and that. Like, one of them said, well, if you'd come in, we would have let you go home and get your documentation. I said, you already had it. It was right there at your fingertips. I even offered to send it to you again. So unfortunately, they decided to follow through with the arrest, and they took me downtown to the jail I'd worked at. I was booked in, and then I found out through one of my colleagues that they ran a false narrative to the media. And I got out when my ex-wife came to pick me up several hours later from the jail. We were driving home. It was all over the radio. My friends called me the next day. It was in the second page of the Florida Times-Union. I had people calling me just in disbelief. They're like, is this you? I said, yeah, it was me. And they're like, how? I said, I don't know.
Okay. So how did it feel at that moment when you realized it wasn't a prank? How did it feel? being perp walked basically down your driveway.
I was in shock. I'm like, how does this happen? Like, how did you guys get to this point? It just like, I don't know how they got to this point.
Were you nervous, or was it more of just plain old shock?
I was just probably in plain old shock. I mean, the nervous part started after the whole thing, kind of the next day, more or less. I was supposed to leave, like I said, to go on a military assignment, and my full-time staff guy called me and said, yeah, you can't go, unfortunately, because of this. Your clearance is being flagged.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that really made the Army mad, because they'd already, released funding for me to go on this trip, and the sheriff's office basically derailed that. And I called this same lawyer who I'd spoken to, who told me I'd done nothing wrong, that, just tell him to look for that guy. And all of a sudden, of course, his tune changed. He went from, you did nothing wrong, to, well, if you retain me to represent you, I can get you a plea deal. And I said, for what? I didn't do anything wrong. You told me that. And his logic was, well, if they got a judge to sign a warrant, you must be guilty. And, I mean, I admit I was just a corrections officer, but even I knew that wasn't true. Like that doesn't make anything, just because they went to a judge and lied to a judge, that doesn't mean I'm guilty of anything.
Oh yeah, you can get a warrant and all kinds of things for.
Oh, I know. Like I said, so I told him, I said, well, I think I want to get a second opinion. And he's like, well, before you make any decisions, please call me back. And I'm like, sure. So I hung up with him, and then I went and met with a private attorney who was a friend of my stepfather. I sat down with him, and of course he even said, yeah, this is total crap. Like this is complete dereliction of duty. These detectives didn't have their ducks in a row. So I hired him.
Stop you there. Why didn't the Army hire a lawyer or give you a lawyer? Why?
Well, the problem is I wasn't on active duty at the time, and I mean, I honestly never even asked them about I just wanted to get represented as quick as I could. So, but from what I understand, to get full representation, I would have had to have been on active duty when the arrest happened. I found that out after the fact. At least that's what I was told. So I do know some military lawyers were involved in this, because my unit kind of made some inquiries or something like that. I don't know all the details, but honestly, I had no problem hiring my own lawyer. It was just nice to know that I had somebody on my, that was going to represent my interests and look out for me.
Yeah, well, luckily you did. You had the resources, but there's a lot of people who don't have those resources. And
yeah, they were counting on that.
Yeah, and if the military does not come and help their
they did come and help. Trust me. They
they did.
Yeah. Yeah, after I hired the lawyer, these detectives probably did more investigating the week after I hired this lawyer than they did the whole 4 months prior. They went to my Army unit, tried to question my first sergeant, and they basically told him, piss off. Yeah, you didn't come talk to us once before this. We're not going to help you now. And we know he didn't do anything wrong. They came back later with a subpoena and threatened members of my full-time staff, who told them, if you guys come back here threatening us again, we're going to call Fox News and let them know what's going on. And at that point, they never set foot, at least in that part of the investigation, they never came back to my military unit. And several more weeks went by. They talked to my squad leader, but like the killer thing is they never talked to anybody prior to arresting me. Like they never reached out to anybody in my command, made any interviews, made any inquiries, nothing. So I'm like, what did they do during this 4 months when I was under investigation? Like what exactly were they doing? And several weeks went by, and then finally the state attorney told him, like, I can't even charge this guy because he has orders. If I charge him, I'm going to be on the hook for this. So he, I was never even actually charged with a crime. Like I was arrested, but I was never even charged. So after that was done, I was very relieved, thank God. But the sheriff's office wasn't done yet. They decided they needed to save face, so they turned it over to internal affairs to try and get me hemmed up on administrative charges.
Okay.
So the first thing when that happened, my lawyer and I both got the letter saying that this is now being referred to internal affairs. My lawyer sent them a letter back stating, Mr. Murray is still represented. Please don't contact him unless you go through us. And then he sent the whole case over to the city manager's office and asked them what to look it over. And we got a letter back from the city manager about 2 weeks after that stating I'd violated no policies, broken no rules, had done nothing wrong at all. So we already had like that arsenal of ammunition ready to go through this whole thing.
Okay. So what happened because of this?
Well, the first thing that happened was this detective they appointed to do this investigation. He was also in the military. At first, I was relieved. I thought, oh, finally, maybe they are actually trying to do the right thing this time. Maybe they're putting someone in who knows how this works, and maybe they're actually trying to make the wrong right here. Yeah. No, that was not the case. First thing this detective did was he called me directly, demanding I come in for an interview. And I said, did you not get the letter my attorney sent you? And he started yelling at me over the phone, telling me that it's not a request, that I was going to comply with him. And I was kind of like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers. I was like, right. So I jotted his information down and I just hung up on him and called my lawyer and let my lawyer deal with him. And they even sent him another letter reminding him that I was representative. And every time this guy wanted to talk, he would always try to call me first. And I just ignored his calls. And I found out through members of my command, they said, are you under another investigation? I said, yeah, I'm under an internal affairs investigation. The criminal part's long and gone, but they're trying to save face, saying I broke a rule. And I think it's because they knew that I was going to sue them. In fact, during the criminal case, they even made an offer to my lawyer where they agreed to drop all charges if I just simply agreed not to sue them. So, I mean, they knew they had stepped in it, I think, a little bit. And but my back to what I was saying, my command asked me, what does this guy do for the sheriff's office? I said, he's an internal affairs investigator or whatever. And they're like, that's funny because he's going around knocking on members of the battalion and the brigade level command and flashing Air Force OSI credentials and identifying himself as an OSI agent.
Ooh.
Which is a big no-no. So, and people were even telling him, like, we know that you're not supposed to be doing this. So, we ended up going in and giving this guy an interview. His whole interview was basically a joke. He wanted me to explain why other people did things. He pretty much didn't ask me anything about what I did. He was asking like, well, why did your squad leader do this? Why did your command do this? He even asked me to explain why his military command would want to do something different than my military command. I'm like, how am I supposed to answer this? So, after that interview, I ended up getting orders to finally go back. My clearance got unflagged. They actually unflagged my clearance while this was all still going on. That's how much BS the federal government and the military knew this was. So they sent me to go do my training for my what I was supposed to originally go to at the time of my false arrest. Well, while I was out in Arizona, I got a voicemail from the same detective wanting me to come in to discuss the findings of the investigation. But before that, there is an interesting part. The union president actually called me during this. This is another individual I'd spoken to, and he told me specifically I did nothing wrong. He wanted me to take a deal agreeing, to something like that. I agreed to say that I misused my leave in exchange for a short suspension. And I said, no, I'm not doing that.
Oh, wow.
And he said, well, why not? I said, because you told me I did nothing wrong, and I know I did nothing wrong. And then he came clean and admitted, well, listen, we're trying to really get this wrapped up before the sheriff's election because Sheriff Rutherford's going into Congress and we really don't want the new sheriff to have to deal with this. I said, that's not my problem.
Wow.
So, and after that, I got a letter from the FOP saying my FOP benefits had been canceled because this is after a year and a half at this point. And so while I'm out in Arizona, this detective leaves me a voicemail, want me to come in to discuss the findings of the investigation. And then I ignored him, of course. My lawyer called and said, yeah, he called me, and he won't give it to me. He says it's departmental policy. It has to be given directly to the employee. And I said, well, you know, I'm out here in Arizona for another several weeks, so I don't know. You tell him whatever you need to. He calls this detective back, and the detective threw a fit over the phone, like just wanting, you know, like, how's he on military orders? He shouldn't be on. I guess they all thought that I was under like a no drill, no pay status because this was going on.
Okay.
And yeah, so when that happened, the next day I got pulled out of class, and by one of our chiefs, and he wanted me to explain my arrest. And I said, how'd you find out about that? This detective called the schoolhouse, the training facility I was at, just to tell them that I had an arrest on my record to try and get me thrown out of the training. It had nothing to do with his job. He was just trying to get me.
Wow.
So yeah.
So he became not your detective, but your hater, your troll.
More or less.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish the training because I had a death in the family, and I had to come home on a Red Cross message. But we came back. We went in to get the findings, and they still, even after all this, tried to sustain allegations against me, and they were recommending I be fired. So I was like, you know, I finally asked my lawyer. I said, what can we do to finally just put this to bed? I'm tired of dealing with this. One of the options was to have a civil service hearing, which would have taken it beyond the sheriff's department. I said, let's do that. I said, I want to, you know, they want to come at me full bore. Let's go back at them. So we opted to have the civil service hearing. They delayed the civil service hearing several months. Like every time we were coming up, there was always some kind of scheduling conflict there. You know, they couldn't do it. So finally, my lawyer got them backed into a corner where we're going to have the civil service hearing. About maybe a week or so before the civil service hearing, I got a phone call from one of my lawyers, and he said the undersheriff, his name was Pat Ivy, wanted us to come in to, as he put it, potentially resolve the situation.
Okay.
I told my lawyers initially, no, they've had enough chances to resolve this. I'm not going to deal with them anymore. And my lawyer replied saying, let's go in. We can at least say we did everything we could to resolve this peacefully.
Yeah.
I said, when he put it like that, I said, okay, we'll give it a chance. So we go down to the police memorial building. We go into this guy's office. We sit down, and he's got a city attorney there taking notes. My lawyer's like explaining to them, like, you know, your detectives have been falsely identifying themselves as military investigators. We've got depositions for this. You know, he laid out my background. But prior to this whole thing happening, I think I'd had like one speeding ticket my entire life that I beat in court. You know, I'd never been in trouble ever for anything. But the undersheriff had pretty much already made up his mind. And he said, well, here's what's going to happen. We're going to knock this down to a 10-day suspension. And I said, for what? What did I do wrong? And like, he couldn't even articulate an actual rule I broke. He was just using semantics, trying to argue that it all boiled down to that one day where I took military, you know, where we didn't go in, but because of the government shut down. That's where this whole thing came from.
Okay.
We found out too that my lieutenant had also used days where I wasn't even on military leave in her complaint. She'd included pictures off my Facebook post of when I was at Disney World with my family on days I was taking personal leave, just to try and fluff up this complaint.
Oh, wow.
And it got so bad, like the nonsense this undersheriff was spouting out. Like I was like sitting there with like, you know, this look, and he threw me out of his office just because like I wouldn't. So the next day, I think it was, my lawyer calls me and says, well, I got an email from the city attorney, and they're willing to give you all your back pay from the time you've been suspended if you're just willing to forego the civil service hearing. I said, okay, so they're going to drop everything and I get back paid. They're like, well, they're not going to drop everything. They're just going to pay you. And I'm like, well, what about the disciplinary allegations? Oh, those still stand. I said, no, I'm not doing it. So anyway, he's like, okay, I'll call him back and tell him. Well, we were like within 2 or 3 days of the civil service hearing at this point, and then we started noticing cars parked outside of my house. People were showing up at my house. There was one day where I can't remember what I was doing, but my ex-wife was in the house alone, and the garage door was shut, and a gentleman in a white sedan came to my house, large gentleman, went up to my front door, started kicking on the front door. My neighbor came up to the fence line. We have like a 4-foot chain link fence that separates our property line, and walked up and called me and said, "Hey, there's a guy banging and kicking on your front door. Is everything okay?" I said, "No, I don't think so." And he took out his phone and started taking pictures of the guy's car, taking pictures of him. And as soon as the guy saw that, he left. And apparently the sheriff had sent somebody, the undersheriff, this Pat Ivy guy, had sent somebody up to my house. I don't know what his intent was, but I later got a bunch of voicemails. They were trying to get me to come back to work all of a sudden, like the day before the civil service hearing. I guess I don't know what their intent was with that. But again, my lawyers had never gotten any phone calls or emails or anything trying to, gain contact with me. So they tried using the excuse, well, if he doesn't come back to work, he can't have the civil service hearing. And even my lawyer said, yeah, he can, and we're still going to. So literally the night before the civil service hearing, they came back and said, we'll drop everything and give him all of his back pay. We'll hold no allegations over him if he just agrees to walk away. So, and that was the end result I wanted. I wanted the disciplinary charges dropped. I wanted my back pay. That was it. And I turned in a resignation and walked away. But, yeah, if I'd been home and that guy had come in the house, it would have been bad.
No, I mean, that's scary because I listen to a lot of true crime, and my daughter and I talk about some of it here, and that's ill intent. Well, this was all, we did get some letters too, and this was all at the direction of Pat Ivy, the former undersheriff of Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. This was all his doing. Pat Ivy. I have no problem saying that name over and over again. Yeah, I don't blame you. It's scary. Do you now have cameras outside of your home?
I do.
I would too.
Yeah, and I have a lot of people watching the house. There's cameras, and fortunately they stay away. They've, and we ended up filing a lawsuit against them. We did end up resolving that. Unfortunately, it wasn't like for a huge amount of money, because the detective's strategy was they basically played dumb. They pretended to say, well, we thought we'd done our jobs, and they basically tried to remove any form of ill intent out of the picture. Because from what my lawyer said, in order to sue somebody, there has to be like ill intent, or in this case. So they did end up settling out of court, though. We did end up getting a financial windfall in that.
Okay.
Well, and and from what I understand too, there's been massive policy. My lawyer said they've made massive policy revisions on how they do their internal investigations now. Like the detectives just can't go on a whim to a judge anymore and get a warrant signed. It has to go through their entire chain of command and whatnot to get approved, to make sure all the ducks are in a row.
That's great. I mean, unfortunately, you had to be the person to set that precedent and make those rules. But hey, they're there now. Hopefully they're being followed.
And honestly, that's why I do these interviews too. Like, because I know one thing I was told through this whole process, they've done this to people and gotten away with it. Because people, like you said, they don't have the resources to hire a lawyer. They don't have the money to live without their paycheck. Fortunately, I did. I'd planned ahead for not this kind of emergency, but just an emergency where I might be out of work for a while.
I'm thinking the whole time you're telling this story, I'm thinking of all the people who do not have the resources and who just get railroaded all the time. And you are a strong person who spoke out the entire time for your rights. And there's so many people that buckle immediately when an authority figure comes at them and tells them they've got to do this or this is going to happen. And luckily you were strong.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't.
Well, like I said, I had a lot of people. My family was very supportive. The military came to back. They gave me extra duty days to kind of help me out financially. They'd call me in and come in and help the full-timers with administrative tasks. I had to sell my car though. I mean, my ex-wife and I were living off of ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly for a while. But I mean, we were able to keep the lights on at least. She had to work some more hours to kind of help out with the bills and stuff. But we made it through it, through the, you know, God's good grace and this, you know, the help of my military command. But yeah, that's and that's something too. I was told every time I talked to one of my higher commanders, they said, yeah, if you were wrong, we wouldn't have helped you. We know you didn't do anything wrong. And that's why we stood behind you.
Yeah. I mean, and your issue is like a no-brainer to everybody. You serve in the military for National Guard. You get days off at least once every month, you know.
Correct.
And then, so it's like, that's a no-brainer. Now, when other people are dealing with other things, you know, it's like, holy cow. When I hear stories like this, it just frustrates me to no end, knowing that people just get railroaded and things happen.
It is really sad. And that's, like I said, you know, at first I just wanted to, because the media, when we went to the media to try and get a retraction done, they won't even acknowledge emails, calls, nothing. So at first I wanted to get these stories out to clear my name publicly so people would see my side of the story, see the truth of the matter. But honestly, after thinking about it more and more, it just, you know, it popped into my head at one point, this has happened to other people. And if people hear this story and they know they don't have to give up, that they can fight back, that there are assets and resources out there to help them. Don't throw in the towel just because someone who outranks you is trying to screw you over, pardon my language, but don't give in. You know, stand up for what's right. If you're wrong, admit it, take the consequences. But if someone's trying to mess you over, especially when it comes to your military duty, there's laws, there's rules, there's regulations to protect you, and make sure that you fall back on those and don't hold those individuals accountable and remind them. Like I said, I had to do that twice before this whole thing happened. I'm surprised it happened a third time, but again, it's just, you know, this all started with just the bitterness of a couple people who didn't like me on a personal level. Had nothing to do with my job performance or anything else.
So what happened to these people? I mean,
from what I understand, nothing.
And they're still in the same positions and everything?
Well, the lieutenant who did this to me, she was already in the process of retirement. But as far as the detectives go, I don't know if they've been promoted or transferred to other agencies, but they're still there from my understanding. A lot of them, I found out the reason why they took this kind of slapstick whole thing, this approach, was a lot of them were either police officers who were trying to climb the ladder into a higher detective slot, or one of the detectives was a homicide detective and he'd gotten demoted to being an internal detective. And a lot of them were just trying to get, you know, those little bronze stars on their chart to try and elevate themselves up. So I think that's why they did this. They thought, oh, we'll just get another conviction or we'll get another deal and it'll make us look good.
No, I think you aptly described it as slapstick. I mean, because if that was their goal, I mean, what the heck were they doing? What movie did they watch to build this plot?
It's kind of silly too, because these are all college educated police officers. You know, everyone that works for that sheriff's office as a police officer has to have a 4-year degree. So, I mean, they're not, you know, they're educated. I don't know how smart they are, but they're obviously educated. You'd think that they know better, at least how to do a basic investigation, especially when something like when I pretty much told them how to do their job and they simply didn't. And I know I'm not the only one that told them this either. So,
well, that's probably another nail in your coffin, is trying to, you know, tell them what they were doing wrong. People like that don't like to be told what to do or why it's wrong.
Well, I think it was an ego thing, like, because I think I did everything but actually come in for an interview, and they kept making this excuse off camera. Well, if you just come in, they were basically trying to set a precedent, telling people, come lick our boots, come do what we tell you to do, or we're going to ruin your life. And they did try to destroy. It wasn't just my job. They tried to destroy my whole life. They tried going after my military career, my security clearance, my job with the sheriff's office, everything.
Wow.
If they'd succeeded, I'd probably be working at McDonald's right now if I was lucky.
Yeah. And all the other people out there who, these specific people have done something too, because, you know, you're not the only one. If they're doing it to their own, they're doing it to others. So that's really frustrating.
It really is.
Okay, well, we're going to go to break, and then we're going to come back, and we're just going to talk about what you have coming up and what you're doing now. And then we'll also get into if you've had any paranormal experiences.
Sure.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Ian Murray, and we're going to listen to Insane by Cade Roth and the Black Sheep.
I can't drink you off of my mind. I think about you all the time. Yeah, the whiskey can't wash you away. Those memories, they won't fade. Can't get you out of my head. Can't forget what you said. I wake up screaming your name. I think I'm going insane. I think I'm going insane. Since you left me, I can't sleep. When I shut my eyes, you're all I see. Yeah, you're leaving. It's getting to me. Oh, I swear, it's driving me crazy. I can't get you out of my head. Can't forget what you said. I wake up screaming your name. I think I'm going insane. I think I'm going insane. Oh, please tell me, why did you leave? Oh, please tell me, tell me, tell me. I can't get you out of my head. Can't forget what you said. I wake up screaming your name. I think I'm going insane. I think I'm going insane. I'm going insane. I'm going insane. I'm going insane.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Welcome back, everybody, to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. And I'm with Ian Murray. And Ian, can you please just tell us what's next? How's your life now? What's going on?
Well, it was a big adjustment recovering from that. Since this whole thing, I've been deployed twice. I've gone through a divorce. I've relocated to another state. It's been a lot of change, but honestly, career-wise, I'm working as a defense contractor for the intelligence community.
Oh, okay.
Mirroring something I do in the military, so it's going really well. I enjoy my job and what I do. I'm hoping to retire from the military in the next year or two.
Okay.
As I mentioned, I've got about 22 years in now, so I'm, counting the days to when I can finally hang up the uniform once and for all and move on to the next chapter of my life.
Yeah.
And that's about it, really, in a nutshell. Just trying to make the best life, trying to live the best life I can.
Yeah, no, that's great. I admire that you're still trucking and, doing everything that you want to do, because, a lot of people could take what you've been through and really spiral and do something really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you've taken what happened to you and used it as a learning tool, and you should be very proud of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, a lot of people were worried about me through this whole thing, for sure.
I bet. I can't imagine. Well, first of all, I've never been arrested, let alone spent the night in jail. So I can't even imagine that. And then to have your name and reputation ruined, and also come to the realization that it could have been even worse.
Oh yeah, it could have been.
Yeah, because it sounds like they made a profession out of railroading people.
Yeah,
So,
there are people in that sheriff's office, and I hate to say it, that seems to be their objective. They just they're very unhappy, and they can't stand seeing anybody who is. So they want everyone to be as unhappy as they are.
yeah, unfortunately, you come across that a lot, no matter what profession you're in.
I agree.
Okay, so Ian, like I told you before, I have experienced a paranormal. Well, I've had paranormal experiences. So after my father died, so I just am kind of in the pursuit of trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out if anybody else has had experiences like me. And so if you've had any paranormal experience, UFO experience, or cryptid experience, could you please share with us?
Sure.
Okay.
The closest thing I could probably say I've experienced to that is I was in Scotland in 2007. My father was from Edinburgh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he took us over there for Christmas. And 2007, 2008, we stayed through the new year. And under Edinburgh, there's this tunnels underground system that's been there for a very long time. It was kind of like an underground world of, I guess, the 18th, 19th, and maybe early 20th centuries.
Yeah.
And we went on a tour of this area that was still open and able to get to. And there was this the small set of rail tracks that ran along the like it was a long corridor, and there was large rooms on either side where the activities underground would, there was places where people did opium, and there was brothels and people where people would drink and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this long rail track that ran along the middle of the main walkway that they told me that there were these cars or carts that they used to transport all the materials down there, like the alcohol and the drugs, furniture, and even in some cases dead bodies. If people died down there, they'd use those to haul them out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while I was down there, I kept hearing this creaking noise. It sounded like metal, like a train on tracks, the metal noise that it makes.
Okay.
And it was like echoing through the whole place. We were in a group with a tour guide. I thought it was just normal. And at the end, I asked some other people, did you, what was with that noise? And no one else apparently heard it except me. So it was kind of a neat experience. I even asked the tour guide. He was an older gentleman who'd been living in Edinburgh his entire life. And he even said, yeah, I've never heard that, but you're not the first person that's told me they've heard something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. It was a really neat place. If I ever go back to Edinburgh, from what I understand, they've expanded it even further. They've opened more of it up. I'd love to take another tour of it if I ever had the chance.
Yeah, I bet your dad growing up there probably has some stories about haunted places.
Yeah, he did. I mean, Edinburgh is a very old city. It was a very cool place. I'm very glad I got to go there with him. He passed away in 2010 from a heart attack.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, yeah. So, we're all real glad. My brother and I were really happy we got to go over there with him.
Yeah, I bet.
At least once before he passed on. But I still have a few relatives over there. They're always inviting me to come over. And one of these days I need to save up my vacation time to go back and visit them. But yeah, it's a very beautiful place, Edinburgh, Scotland. And from my understanding, our ancestry goes all the way back to like the William Wallace type days.
Yeah, mine too.
So, we have very deep roots in Scotland. So
yeah, no, I am so fascinated with Scotland. It's something that just like Boudica. I mean, I know she was like on the border. I'm not sure she was actually in Scotland or whatever. Have you heard of Boudica?
No.
Oh, she was a woman warrior who fought Rome. So I love all kinds of stages of history in Scotland. But that's on my bucket list. One day I want to go find her resting place.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, there's just so much. It is really cool. We've been to some of we went to Edinburgh Castle, which is actually still even being used as a military installation. So, yeah, I would love to. I'd love to go back and check it out again.
Yeah, well, it's on my bucket list.
You'll love it.
Well, thank you, Ian, so much for coming on here and talking to me and helping me to understand more about the injustices of our system.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
are in a system and we are all being manipulated and controlled, even if we don't like it or want to believe it, to some degree. And there are people who pull the strings. And unfortunately, in your case, you had quite a few people who were pulling the strings and seem to have been doing it and are continuing to do it for years.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, what goes around comes around, though. What's done in the darkness will be brought to the light eventually. So,
amen to that. And
they'll get what's coming to them eventually, one way or another.
Yeah, and my true crime sleuths out there who are watching this, pay attention. Okay, thank you, Ian.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you too. You have a blessed day.
You do. You're the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and listening to Ian's story. Just like with Marcellus Williams, he was railroaded. Fortunately, Ian's life was not taken like Marcellus, but I'm just trying to highlight people's problems and the injustices that they've had, and just showing what's really going on out there. I was blind for a long time, really blind for a long time, and did not realize what was going on. And so I've woken up, and I am now exploring all of that and trying to share it with you. So I hope everybody has a very blessed day, and next time Laura will be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.